And joining us now to discuss the latest on the Texas redistricting push is Bart Marcois, former presidential campaign policy advisor and former career diplomat, and George Carrillo, former Democratic candidate for governor of Oregon and former director of social determinants of health for Oregon. So Bart, I'll start with you today. Governor Greg Abbott has now asked the Texas Supreme Court to remove State Representative Gene Wu from office. So Abbott calls him the ringleader, apparently, of the Democratic exodus. For Americans eager for more dialogue and, good old-fashioned debate in politics, this entire saga might be very disappointing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it is disappointing because the essence of democracy is debate and voting. And the Democrats in the state legislature in Texas have fled the state rather than continue to engage in debate and voting. They say, if we can't win, we're not going to play at all. And let's keep in mind what's actually happening here. The state legislature is creating 5 new majority Republican districts. That's what everybody's talking about. But they're also creating, these are majority Hispanic districts. This is a vote of confidence in the Republican appeal to the Hispanic population of Texas. This is not some, weird gerrymander. They're going and they're creating majority Hispanic districts in a state that did not have them before, and that's what the Democrats are fleeing rather than stay and vote about. It's a real shame.
So George, redistricting is a very normal and common thing in our democratic system. So what are your thoughts on all this?
So my thoughts on this is that this is strange to be happening, before the Census Bureau, but Texas has done this before. In 2001, they went into special session and redrew the district lines before the Census Bureau data came out. And, I can appreciate from my colleague here acknowledging the presence of the Hispanic vote in Texas. But let's be clear here. Republicans aren't playing a fair game here. They're doing things behind closed doors. They know that they can redraw these lines. They're doing it outside of that 10-year window. This isn't about giving more power to Latinos in Texas. This is about securing Congress for the president. So this is not about democracy. This is about special interest towards the president.
So Bart, are Democrats and Republicans putting the American people first?
Oh, I think both parties are trying to put their vision for the American people first. But what you're seeing here is suddenly the Republican Party is pushing back against what has been done to them for 35 years by the Democrats, that Republicans have rolled over and just taken it. It's true that that it's unusual to do this in the middle of the decade, but what drove this is a Supreme Court decision that said, hey, when you last redistricted, there were restrictions on you and you were not allowed to draw the district lines the way that you wanted to. The Supreme Court struck down that law that said you couldn't do what you wanted to after the 2020 census. And now, in light of that Supreme Court decision, the legislature is saying, okay, now we're going to do what we wanted to do back then. We're going to do what all these Democrat states have done for 35 years. It's ironic that they fled to Illinois, which has 17 congressional seats, 14 of which are occupied by Democrats, although there are 43% to 45% Republicans in the state. Where's the fairness there? Massachusetts, 9 congressional seats, all occupied by Democrats, 0 Republicans, although there are 43% Republicans in Massachusetts. Maryland, 7 out of 8 occupied by Democrats. Oregon, I looked it up in honor of my friend Mr. Carrillo here. Oregon, 5 out of 6, although 43% of the voters in Oregon are Republicans. That's not fair, and people know it's not fair. In Texas, 65% of the Well, let me give the actual numbers. Um, there are 25 Republicans and 13 Democrat seats, and 56% of the state votes Republican. So there is a slight edge for Republicans there, but nothing like in these states that are controlled by Democrats. So, it's just they're pushing back, and for once, Republicans are playing hardball, and Democrats aren't used to that.
Okay, George, if we put aside the partisanship, putting aside the back and forth, the accusations on one side of the aisle towards the other side, what is the solution that actually puts Americans first?
Yeah, so I want to be able to comment on what my colleague had said here. I think that the numbers speak for themselves, especially in Texas, as Texas is leaning more Democratic than it ever has before. Their Republican voter turnout is 53%, but yet they hold 66% of the congressional seats. And actually, in Oregon, the Republican Party only represents 33%. And so the numbers aren't quite there to justify my colleague's position on this. But I think that let's get back to Texas here. With Texas, under the Texas Constitution, is that this needs to have about equal population, compactness, continuity, and county preservation. And when you look at the way Texas has drawn its lines, it is not the spirit of the law. It does it about population, but not compactness. It's not about continuity. It's not about preservation of its county. And right now, with redrawing the lines, again, this fire was stoked by the president because he's in fear that he is going to lose control of the House. And so, again, this is not about voters. I think if we want to talk about democratic states where the people have risen, like in California and New York, they have independent commissions that actually determine those lines. In California, they have 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and 5 independents that do that. And so that is actually working for the people. It shouldn't be politicians that are working primarily in whether it's a blue state or a red state. I think that's completely irrelevant. It should be an independent body that's looking at the true purpose of having fair elections and having proper representation in those elections. We need to get back to election integrity. And this course of action by the governor is not. And what Republicans are doing right now in Texas is doing what they can do in order to stand up for the people, so that way we can have a fair election and we can have people that actually represent those communities and have what the Constitution says. Meet all the requirements, just not what you want to pick and choose. And just because it's legal doesn't make it right.
I mean, you're absolutely right. We need to have fair elections. And Bart, let me go to you now. We have a map here of Maryland's 3rd congressional district from several years ago. This map gained widespread attention at the time. Can you add more to that?
Sure. When you look at that, you realize that those are far-flung sections of the state. This is a map drawn by Democrats to deprive Republicans of seats. There were a couple of extra seats, and they needed to squeeze as many Republicans out. And they squeezed all the Republicans out, and there's now just 1 seat left. And you'll notice here that there are lines that are 1 street wide that go for miles, connecting one section to another. And these things are, I'm trying to wave my hands around and point at the section here. You see 4 sections that are separated by there is no contiguous connection there. I agree completely with Mr. Carrillo. I think we should have a compactness, a contiguous connection. There should be some semblance of community in a congressional district. It could be done. And maybe what will come of this, I mean, California, they've squeezed all but 9 out of the 52 seats. They're less than 20%, although again, they have over 43% of the vote in gubernatorial and presidential elections. If we could get both sides to drop their arms and have everybody draw lines that are roughly recognizable as real communities, I think that would help everybody.
So, George, I think you would agree with me if I say that in today's political climate, it's very difficult to redistrict in a way that everyone can agree upon. So, where do we go from there?
Well, I think it has to go to the independent commissions. I really truly believe that it needs to be taken out of the hands of politicians and given back to the people. Let the people decide. Let's follow our laws and let's have some consistency throughout the country and what this looks like for congressional seats. That this is not politically motivated. Because regardless, if this was a Democratic state trying to do this in order to give more support towards, let's say the Biden or Harris administration, I would be saying the same thing. It's not right. We need to do what's right for the people. We have to acknowledge, like in Texas, also, like 95% of its growth it comes from its urban centers. So if they're going to redistrict and they're going to push this through, then let's let those numbers reflect how they're actually mapping those out. And let's start holding them accountable. And that's where I asked the Hispanic community, you are the sleeping giant. You are 40% of the population in Texas. You have to participate. If they get it wrong, vote them out of office. This is your state. This is your vote. Start to wake up because you will determine the next election happening in the midterms in 2026.
So, Bart,
I agree, and
yesterday.
make sure they vote Republican.
Okay, all right, Bart. Republicans have complained about Democrats' efforts to redistrict. Democrats have complained about Republicans' efforts to redistrict. And we were talking about this yesterday, and we were questioning if there even is a moral high ground here.
No, this is not a question of morality. It's a question of political back and forth. I don't think very many people. I used to look to political leaders for morality, and I stopped 20 years ago, and I was one of the last holdouts because I was still very naive. I'm not looking to politicians for morality, but I am looking for fairness. And I think Mr. Carrillo is right. An independent commission would be great in all 50 states. But what I see is Gavin Newsom standing up and saying, okay, we have an independent commission drawing lines. If Texas goes through with this, I am going to abolish that independent commission and go to a partisan commission. And I don't see how he's going to squeeze 5 more seats out of the paltry 9 that are left. It's 9 against 43. I don't see how he's going to squeeze 5 more seats out of it. But I mean, this goes back to 1981, with the Phil Burton gerrymander, the famous. I mean, he was. I wish he had been on our side. He was famous for his ability to draw maps. He famously drew a map of a state legislative district for his brother that had to be contiguous, and it was only contiguous at low tide. And at high tide, it was broken, but he pushed it through and got it through the courts and said it's contiguous at low tide, therefore it's a contiguous district. He was a brilliant strategist, but I think his map drawing and demographic calculating abilities were what led to the decline. I do wish that both sides would come to an independent commission, but as long as the other side isn't, we have to fight back. And the Texans are saying, hey, we were forced into an unfair disadvantage, and we now have a legal right to draw the lines the way we think is right in our state. And that's what they're doing.
Okay, George, we got to wrap up. I started with Bart, so you get the final thought.
Yes, thank you. It comes down to this. Gavin Newsom can't abolish the independent commission. It's embedded into their constitution. He can ask them to go into a special session and be able to do that, but to abolish it, it's going to take too much time. It wouldn't meet the requirements of the 2016 election. Same thing with New York. I think right now my message to Democrats is we've got to get on message. Let's change the laws where it needs to be changed. If we want independent commissions throughout the country, let's do it through the legislative route. Let's not start precedents that every time someone is in power, that we're going to be changing maps. Because if we do that, then it's not about voter power. It's about you just need a map majority. And that's not fair elections. And that's not the message that Democrats should be pushing. So let's not play into the hands of Republicans. Let them die by their sword. And let's do the right thing. Let's change legislation. Let's get independent commissions throughout the country. And let's make our elections fair.
Okay, we got to end it there. George, Bart, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much.